Hey guys, Julian here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make techno like Regenerator, aka Calvin Harris. As usual, you can get the full project file and samples, MIDI, and presets from this video. It's all available right at the top of the description on my Bandcamp, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there, because it's already available, and yeah, let's get started. First sound that we have here would be this first 303, which sounds like this. So this is just playing one note. It's just going burr. Your really simple 303 pattern. That's the first thing to keep in mind here. It's just really stripping it back and going simple with the stuff. You know, you don't want anything too crazy because it's all about just having really simple elements like this working really well together with the style. And for the sound with this one, it's made using analog. So the secret to these kind of 303s is to actually use a square wave or a pulse wave. In the case here, I've actually used both because you can see we have both of these set to the square wave, both of these oscillators, and then the first one has the width of the regular setting, so just a square wave, but then the second one has a very low width, so that is creating the pulse wave, and then we're just kind of putting those two together to make it this big fat waveform. But yeah, a lot of times for 303s people use saw waves, and that does work well, but with this style, to get this really fat, more round sounding 303, the square waves and pulse waves work really well. Then those are going into a low pass filter, which has an envelope on it, and then you can also see that I've got the filter frequency set like this, where it's automating. So it's a really subtle automation. All it's doing is just like just kind of opening up like this. But yeah, just like a little bit of movement is gonna go a long way to keep this alive and like keep the sound feeling really fresh. If I get rid of this, it's kind of just flat. And this is also a good way to make a really simple pattern like this sound a lot more exciting and intricate. Then we have the amp envelope set like that. Then we just have a bit of reverb going into this drum bus here. So you can see this reverb is pretty short. We actually have two here in the chain. And you can hear why, because if we just have this first one, it's giving it a bit of atmosphere and a bit of space, but then the second one really makes the reverb feel even with the 303. And so this is something else I noticed, is that you really need to use quite a bit of reverb here. But then it's just keeping it really controlled. Like both of these have a really low dry wet and a really short time, so it works. And yeah, and then after that we have this drum bus, which you can see we actually just, yeah, that's just going right after the reverb. You can see, you know, it's just making the sound a bit fatter and a bit more powerful. Then we have a high pass filter to cut out the low end a little bit. And then we have that reverb, and then I have another high pass on here, which is just to kind of make sure the reverb doesn't get too crazy, because if I turn this off, you can hear there's actually a bit of like low mid-range frequencies, and that can clash with the kick really easily, so we're just really making sure that the reverb isn't going to have any problems. And then finally I just have this low pass, which is just automating up and down in a few different times to kind of make the sound get a bit deeper and kind of tuck it back into the mix and then open it up more. And then after that we have this second 303, which sounds like this. So this one is really simple for the notes. You can see it's just C sharp, just like the top one, except this one is doing a bit of gliding. And yeah, this is just kind of adding a bit of rhythm to the pattern, you know, making it a little bit more exciting without having to have too much stuff going on. Because if we just have that main 303, like especially in this part, it just kind of feels like something's missing. But then we add in this layer, and you can hear it's filtering up. And yeah, so it's kind of just adding some interesting punctuation to the 303 pattern here. The way I made the synth is using operator. It's just a saw wave going into a bandpass filter. So this is a more standard sort of 303 sound. We just have bandpass like that. With this, you don't want to use too much envelope, because if you use too much, you can hear it can get a little bit too soft really quickly. So the key is just to keep that like pretty small. And then I have this LFO here on the filter frequency, just moving it slightly throughout the track so that it's never in the same place twice. And it kind of feels a little bit more lively this way, having it not just be the same thing the whole way through. Then we have a bit of overdrive. Here's without that. And then with it. So you can hear that's what really creates the 303 sound. It makes this not just sound like a saw wave with the bandpass. Then we have a bit of echo just on eighth notes, just to kind of give it some space. Then we have a bit of drum bus, which is fattening it up. And then finally, I just have a high pass filter, as well as this low pass here at the end, which is automating throughout the track at a few different times to just kind of make it get a bit deeper, just like with the main 303. And then on the group of those two, I just have a bit of drum bus and a high pass filter to kind of push them together a bit more. So here is without that. And then with it, it's subtle. But you can hear it's just making them a bit fatter and kind of making them fit into the track a bit more. And yeah, then after that we have the kick, which sounds like this. So this is a rumble kick. The way it's made is I have just the main kick here. Just playing straight quarter notes with a bit of drum bus on it. And then I have the same kick actually in this separate track here, which is actually just playing 16th notes. And then we're drum bussing that a little. You can see I'm adding the boom, that's at C sharp, so that's making it a bit bassier. And then it's being side chained, so it's kind of bouncing off of the main kick. And then I have this EQ3 here that's filtering it so it's just the low end. And then you put those together. And there you go. That's a really great way of making a rumble kick. When I was listening to the Love Regenerator tracks, a lot of the rumble kicks don't just sound like a standard reverb or delay rumble, because it's got this very powerful rumble. Like with this, how it's like a solid note the whole way through. You know, it's just constantly da-da-da-da. With a reverb or delay rumble, it would be more like da-da-da-da. Like it would be kind of getting a little bit quieter. It wouldn't work the same way, so this is what makes me believe it's made this way. But yeah, this just gets you this really fat sounding rumble kick. And then to take it even further, I have a bit of processing on the group. So it's mostly just this drum bus. Here's without it. And with it, you can hear it just pushes the two layers together, makes it sound like one really fat kick. And also just makes both of them fatter individually. You know, it makes it all just really fit nicely into the track. And then these other effects here are just this high pass filter, which comes on in a few different times. You can see like in the build up. And then here, just to kind of like filter it. You know, it's a nice arrangement tool, because you can have that kick, you know, keeping the groove going in the build. Get that constant dum, 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 dum. But then it's not going to be just like the full low end with the kick. And then the slow pass filter here is mostly just for the break. I mean, it is only in the break there. Just kind of filtering out the highs so that the kick disappears right before the drop. And yeah, that's it for the kick. From there we have the percussion. So I'll start first with this little extra hats layer. If you listen, these are those little hi-hats that so what these are is just these three little hi-hats. This one, and this one. Very drum machine-esque sounds. I've got them in a drum rack here, and then I've just got them going through a bit of echo and a bit of drum bus. And yeah, these just kind of add a bit of extra bounce to the percussion, you know. This track, like I said, is very simple. It's pretty much just resting on the main basic layers. So without these, it can be a bit flat. But you can hear how those breathe a lot of life into the track when we add them. And it's a simple thing too. It's not going to take up too much space in the mix. Like when you're trying to add something like this, you don't want to make like a big main element that's going to be right in your face, because it's not really going to fit that well when you already have all your other main elements. But just adding something bright like this, it can fit really nicely in there. And yeah, that is it for the extra hi-hats. Then from there we have this little clap. So you can hear this is just this clap sample here, and then I've got it going through a bit of echo as well as a bit of drum bus, and this is just adding some extra fills every 4 bars or so. It just kind of brings it to life again, like it's kind of like the extra hi-hats. This is that little extra thing. It just adds a lot more flow to the drums and makes them feel a lot more alive. Then after that we have the main hi-hats. So we start with this closed hi-hat. What this is it's actually like more like a shaker sample. And then you can see I brought it in here, I pitched it down, and then I shortened it, so then it just kind of becomes a hi-hat. And that works really well for that 16th note hi-hat, because it's pretty fat, you know, it's pretty like, it's got a nice attack to it. And then we have the open hi-hat, which sounds like this. So this is 2 layers, it is this one, and then this one. So the first one is sort of like the main tone that you hear, but that second one is adding a lot of punch to make it like really like, so it's gonna sit nicely in the mix. Without that, it's a bit too soft. And then on the first one, you can see I've also taken the sustain, and in this part it's being automated, so it's just like a bit shorter. And then when we get to this part, it becomes louder. So yeah, just kind of a nice technique to make it a little bit more dynamic. And then I just have this drum bus on here, kind of gluing these together and making this hit a bit more. And yeah, and then the last percussion layers after that would be this clap and snare. So these make this track very driving, and what it is it's this clap just playing on the 2 and 4. Pretty standard clap, you know, got some drum bus on it. And then the snare, which plays on every 2. So you get that like reverb hit and then it pauses. Reverb hit and then it pauses. It's almost like call and response, you know? And for the snare, what it is it's this like really fat snare sample. And then I've got it going through some reverb, a bit of drum bus to make it even fatter, and then just finally a high pass filter to cut out the lows. And yeah, and then on the group of the percussion, we just have a bit of processing as well. You can see I've got some saturation and drum bus. So here's without those. I'll show you why I stacked them. Here's with nothing. Saturator. And then drum bus. So you can hear why these are important. You know, it really makes these drums hit. And makes them powerful enough that you don't need a million different elements happening. You know, you can really just have the main stuff, and it's fat and it's powerful, and the track is gonna sound really full. And you can hear what each individual layer is doing. And then finally, we just have this high pass filter just to cut out the lows a bit and make sure there's not a whole lot of like and you know, super deep low end stuff happening in the percussion. And yeah, the next sound here would be this little metal sound in the build-up, which sounds like this. So yeah, what this is it's this sound. Just like this cool kind of driving sound, you know, this works really well in the break here. I didn't want to have the 303s in the break, but you still need something to fill it out. If I turn this off, you know, it's kind of missing something. So when we add this, it's a perfect layer there because it's kind of melodic, where it's got like a tone to it, but it's also very rhythmic and percussive and driving. And yeah, and then for effects on that, we just have a bit of echo, a bit of drum bus to kind of make it a bit stronger, a high pass filter, and then I have this washout rack here. So this is something I made actually, just kind of working with this other washout rack that I tweaked. Let me know if you guys want to see. I'll make a video about this. But this is just on here, and this just kind of washes it out so that, you know, it's slowly disappearing over the course of the build. This is a really great way to make this smoothly build up and not have it just kind of stop all of a sudden when that silence comes. Because if I turn this off, it just kind of stops there. So yeah, that is it for that metal sound. The next thing here would be all of these vocals, which sound like this. So as you can see, we actually have quite a bit of vocals in here for a techno track. There's 3 different vocals. This is something that I was really noticing, is that to make this style of techno, the vocals really help. You don't want, obviously like a whole verse and chorus or anything too much like that, but just having like little type of samples are adding a lot to the track. And again, like, I don't think it's too much. Like, this still sounds fine to me as like a techno fan and DJ and all that, but it's not like, it would be a little bit too flat if we just get rid of these. It's like those are really opening it up. And also you gotta keep in mind too, is like this techno is maybe for a little bit more mainstream audience to become warmed up to techno. So it's like, the vocals may seem like a lot if you're somebody who listens to like Polar Inertia every day, but to somebody who is like just listening to deep house and EDM stuff all the time, and then they hear this, is like the vocals are gonna help them kind of get into it. So it's also a thing of just sort of, making it so everybody can listen and everybody can get into it. And then maybe after hearing something a little bit more straightforward with vocals, then they would go and find the more underground stuff. So that's kind of the idea here. And with these, you can see the effects are pretty straightforward. We just got some echo and reverb, drum bus, high pass. Pretty much the same thing on all of these. I've got that little EQ on the heads to kind of get rid of some muddy frequencies. And then yeah, this one is just straight up reverb and drum bus. Nothing too crazy, just a little bit of stuff to give it some space, a little bit of stuff to fatten it up, and then cleaning it up with EQ. And yeah, it's really straightforward. The next layer here is this little vocal pad. This thing. So the way that this was made is I took the hey sound and I put it through some reverb. I actually have the channel here. This is what it was. It's literally just high pass and a super long reverb. And then what I did is I froze that down. I'll do it right now. So we're freezing it. And then you flatten it, which I'll do that as well. And then now you can see we have this long this is like the original sound. And then we have this reverb tail. And so what I did is I just took like a little piece of that and reversed it. And then I added like a little fade like that. And then what you can do is you just put it. And there we go. So that is how I made this. And then what's happening here is, yeah, you can see it's the same thing on the track. And then I've got it going through some chorus and some reverb, so it just kind of makes it a little bit more spacey, a little bit more of a background element. This one, you don't want it to be too in your face, so these kind of help to make it more of like a pad. And then we just have a drum bus to fatten it up a little bit and kind of bring it out and bring out that reverb. Then we have a high pass filter cutting out the lows. I have a low pass filter, which kind of brings it in over here. Because you can see, like, you don't want it to just drop right in. It's kind of fading in smoothly. And then finally, we just have this auto pan, which is kind of simulating a side chain, just to make it kind of bounce off of the kick a little bit more. And yeah, that's it for that little vocal pad. And then the next layer that we have here is just this little... So the way I made this is I just took this sound. This is actually from one of my sample packs. It's from this Definitive Track Effects Volume 1. I just dropped this last week. I'll put this in the description. But what I did is I just took that and then I shortened it a little bit with a fade. But it had like this really fat clap. So I'm just going... And then I have some reverb and drum bus and a high pass on it. So this is something to keep in mind with these tracks. Like the effects, I'm about to show you some more effects in a second that are also pretty minimal. The effects are really minimal. You can't do too much with the effects or else it's just going to take up too much space in the track and it's not really going to work. But if you have something like this where it's just... It's a great way to transition there. So that's what I did. That's just like... Really simple little way to drop into the drop there. Very powerful. And then the last thing down here would be these sort of riser elements, which sound like this. So we start with the snare here. It's really simple. It's just a snare going... You can see I've kind of played with the velocities, this has the same thing. And then when we get to this clip, it just goes to straight 16th notes. But yeah, and then this is just like a pretty standard 909 snare. I've got the sustain turned down to make it a bit punchier. I've got a drum bus on it, and then this high pass here, which just automates up at the end. So it sort of like disappears into the mix, you know? And then finally, there's just this utility here, which is just building it. So it's kind of going up through that build-up. And then we have the riser. So this is really simple. It's just some white noise in operator here, going through a bandpass filter where I've got the filter frequency just being automated to build up like that. You know, really simple. It's not going to take up too much space, but it just creates this big building thing in the background of the track that works really well while still keeping like the vocals and the metal sound and the main things right up front. And yeah, and then the last layer here would just be this clap. So this is just sort of backing up the snare. You can hear how the snare had that. And then this is like kind of playing off of that pattern. And then I just have this building up with this low pass filter here just to kind of make it come in a little bit smoother. And then we've got a drum bus and a bit of a high pass filter on it. And yeah, that is it for the clap, and that's it for the build-up elements, and that is also going to be it for this video, guys. So, as always, I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like this video as well as subscribe, and let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the full project file and samples and MIDI, presets, everything like that from this video is available right at the top of the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there, because it's already available. Thank you so much, guys, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.